and welcome to Challenge Solutions. In this video, I'm going to be reviewing the iPad Air 4th generation and the Apple Magic Keyboard. I bought this iPad and keyboard about a month ago, and I've been using them ever since for everything I would use my normal iPad for, and I have definitely found things that I love about this and things that I hate about it. This review is geared toward blind and visually impaired users, but we are mainly talking about hardware more than software, because you need to keep in mind that any Apple iPad is completely accessible from day one. I'm mainly going to be discussing whether this setup is worth the money compared to the budget model iPad. The budget iPad starts at 32 gigs of storage and it starts at $329. The new iPad Air starts at 64 gigabytes of storage and $599. Your standard run-of-the-mill keyboard for the budget iPad is going to cost around $80, maybe give or take a few, and the Apple Magic Keyboard costs $299. All that being said, you can find cheaper prices through Apple's education store if you're a student. I did that. I did not pay full price for my iPad or my keyboard, but that is still a price jump of about $500 from the budget iPad and a standard keyboard to the iPad Air 4th generation and Apple Magic Keyboard. It is worth noting that you can buy cheaper keyboards for the iPad Air. The Logitech Touch is said to be the closest competitor to the Magic Keyboard, and it is half the price. So if you're just looking for a slightly more powerful device and you don't care too much about having Apple's specific keyboard, that may be a good option for you. Also, if you're looking for your first iPad, I'm just going to tell you straight up, don't get this one. Buy the cheapest $329 iPad. It will probably do everything you need it to do. You can upgrade the storage if you need to, but I recommend using that first and buying a keyboard just so you can figure out if you even like this, or if you're going to use it, or if you're going to need more. But then after a while, if you do find yourself needing more power, or if you bought a lower storage model and you need more storage and you want to upgrade, then maybe consider buying the iPad Air and Magic Keyboard like I have. That's what I did. I'm happy that I did that. I knew I wanted this and I don't regret purchasing it, but if you buy this straight out of the gate, you're probably going to find a lot of the features a little pointless. But if you're looking for a middle grade iPad that's a little better than the budget iPad but not quite as pricey as the iPad Pros, and you're trying to decide whether this setup is worth it or is going to be good for you, this review is for you. So to help you make that decision, I'm going to give you a rundown of my experiences with this whole setup and let you know what I liked and didn't like. So let's start with the iPad. Physically, the 4th generation iPad Air has the same design as the iPad Pros. This means that it has square sides, so the edges are flat and not rounded like the regular iPad. But honestly, that really did not make a difference for me. I still hold my iPad in the exact same way that I always have. What did make a difference for me, though, is that this model does not have a headphone jack. The iPad Air has one USB-C port, and that is all. And no, it does not come with the dongle for headphones. But it does come with the USB-C charging cable and a C adapter, so I guess we should just count our blessings there. But yeah, if you want to use headphones with this that are not Bluetooth, you're going to need to buy a USB-C to 3.5mm dongle. So that is really annoying, and for some reason I did not expect that when I bought this, so just putting it out there that this iPad does not have a headphone jack. And to make up for not having the headphone jack, Apple gave us two kind of decent speakers. It sounds a lot better than the lower tier iPad, but it only has 2 speakers compared to the iPad Pros, which have 4. And I didn't realize this because there are 4 speaker grills on the iPad. I genuinely thought it had 4 speakers until I looked at the Apple site when scripting this video, and then I realized it only had 2, and once you hear it, you cannot unhear it. There is 1 speaker at the top and 1 at the bottom, and all the sound comes from one side of the device. I didn't notice it because I haven't listened to it much, but once you hear it, you cannot unhear it. So the case feels like there are 4 speakers, there are not, and the sound is a little lopsided when the iPad's in portrait mode. When it's in landscape mode, it basically just sounds like stereo speakers because you have one on each side, but in portrait, if you really listen, you can hear that all the sound is coming from the left side of the device if the power button is on top. So that is really annoying, but the speakers are better than the budget iPad, and I mean, this is middle grade, so it makes sense that they would be between the budget iPad and the iPad Pro. But there is one thing about the iPad Pro design that I haven't mentioned, and that is that the iPad Air also does not have a home button. This has pros and cons for me. On one hand, not having the button gives the screen a lot more room. I have extremely low vision, but I sometimes attempt to look at the screen still. So if you have enough vision to see anything on your screen, this is going to be really nice for you. We're going from 10.2 inches on the latest budget iPad to 10.9 inches on the Air. That is a pretty good jump. And the 11-inch Pro, which is the next iPad above this one, like it says in the name, only has 11 inches, so that's only 0.1 inches bigger. So I really do appreciate having that extra room for the screen. But on the other hand, the voiceover controls without the home button are kind of annoying for me. Now, these have been around for a while. The controls are the same as the ones on every iPhone after the 8s and 8 Pluses, but this was my first device without a home button, and boy, does it take some time to get used to. As you use the device, the controls become more natural, but at first I had to listen for the voiceover clicks every time I needed to go home or use the app switcher or the control center or the notification center. If you haven't used these controls, basically you're swiping up from the bottom of the screen or down from the top of the screen until you hear VoiceOver make a specific number of click noises, and that's how you know if you're going home or to the app switcher or to the control center or notification center. I have gotten much better at this, but using those swipe controls is still not as fast as just hitting the actual physical button. Another product of the missing home button is the addition of Touch ID to the power button. It's all the same concept, but in my opinion, it doesn't work as well. The Touch ID sensors are fine, but the practicality of this kind of suffers a little because I don't have 1 or 2 specific fingers that I use to hit the power button. With the home button, it was always my thumb, because that button just begs for your thumb to press it, and I was holding the iPad with the other fingers. But now I never really know which finger I'm going to use, and none of them seem particularly comfortable. I kind of just turn it on with whichever finger happens to be closest to the power button at that point, but then I have to put in my password because I didn't have that finger in the Touch ID, or I put it in a different position than I would when I set up Touch ID. So it just makes it a little more time consuming. But honestly, I'm getting used to that as well. It hasn't really hindered my experience or ability to use the device. It's just one of those tiny little annoying things. But that's about it for the iPad. As I mentioned earlier, all the software is the same. So if you can use one iPad, you can pretty much use them all. Like with the home button, you can triple click the power button to enable VoiceOver at setup and make it an accessibility shortcut, and after that, you're pretty much right at home on any Apple device. One last thing I did want to mention though is that the colors are not what you think they're going to be. If you look at the pictures of these iPads online, they are super brightly colored. This was actually a real selling point for me because I was thinking it would be easy for me to tell my iPad from all my other devices and from everyone else's devices. I mean, what are the chances of many other people having the sky blue iPad Air? But this looks gray to me. I'm gonna put it in the camera now so you can see, if you can see. This is the iPad. I don't know if you can see this. I cannot tell that this is blue until the lighting hits it a certain way. But I am really low vision, So I started asking other people, and no, apparently this iPad is almost storm gray. It has a hint of blue, but it's only there in really good lighting. That is a very nitpicky thing for me to gripe about, but I did want to put that out there. If you were hoping for something with a unique color and high contrast on every surface, this is not that device. But enough about the iPad. The keyboard is the real kicker here, because $299 for a keyboard is a lot of money. So let's talk about it. You may have heard this keyboard described as having the iPad floating, so I'm going to do my best to describe what that means. The iPad sits on the keyboard landscape, just like it would with any other keyboard case. It is attached to magnets on the top half of what would be the lid of any other keyboard case or laptop. The case opens also like any other laptop or keyboard case, but the top half of the lid, where the iPad is magnetically attached, folds backward again. So you have your keyboard laying flat on your desk or table or whatever surface you're working on, the lid coming up from the case at about an 80 to 85 degree angle, not quite a 90, but almost there. And then the top half of the lid is folded backward at a pretty subtle angle. I don't really know how to give a specific measurement without confusing, but the angle is not much, but it's enough. So since the iPad is only attached to the top part of the case, when you bend that part backward, the bottom of the iPad comes up. It's angled slightly above the keyboard. So the top of the iPad is attached to that magnet that's folded backward, and the bottom is not actually attached to anything. It's just kind of floating there. So of course, to accomplish this, the magnets on the keyboard have to be really strong, and they are. The iPad just slides right into place when you put it on the keyboard case. And that is really nice, actually. I find it very satisfying. Speaking of really nice, the keys on this thing are heavenly. They are very, very satisfying to type on and very responsive. I really, really love typing on this thing, possibly more than my Mac. They have a nice feel. They don't feel like a lot of the cheaper keyboards which sacrifice the quality of the keys for portability reasons. They feel so nice. It is definitely a nice luxury keyboard. Another feature that sets the Magic Keyboard apart from lower-end keyboard cases is that it has a trackpad, and a really nice one. I believe the Logitech Touch also has a trackpad, but I haven't used it, so I can't speak to how well it works. But here is the weird thing. When you use the trackpad with VoiceOver, it does not work like the Mac trackpad does. If you're unfamiliar with VoiceOver on the Mac, you basically have the option to perform your VoiceOver gestures on the trackpad. This is not the case with the iPad. The trackpad works in the same way whether VoiceOver is turned on or off. When you use the trackpad, it's like the equivalent of touching and dragging on the screen. This was super annoying for me at first, and I still find myself trying to swipe and use the rotor from my trackpad, but there are also some good sides to it. Mainly that you can still use the gestures that anyone else would use with the trackpad. So a 3-finger swipe up takes you home, 3-finger swipe and hold opens the app switcher, and 2-finger swipe scroll. The 3-finger gestures make up for the not having the home button because they make it super easy to just swipe and go home. And the 2-finger scrolls are actually very useful on the home screen and in apps like Settings and Contacts where you're scrolling through long lists. I don't know if Apple has any plans to do this, but if they would add trackpad mode like the Mac and allow us to toggle between the two, this would be absolutely perfect. I would love this 10 times more. But it does not have that right now. So just don't buy this and expect it to work just like your Mac would. Now, I only have 2 more nitpicky things about this keyboard. The first is that this case has no sides. The top part of the case is literally just the flat magnet that the iPad sits on. I think this is so you can magnetically attach your Apple Pencil to the side of your iPad and keep the iPad on the keyboard, but it can be a little inconvenient. My main problem with it is that it leaves every button exposed. This means that if you throw your iPad into your backpack and the volume just happens to be up, there is the potential for something else in your bag to bump against the power button several times and disable and enable VoiceOver while you are sitting in a silent library. Do not ask me how I thought of that very specific scenario. But it really can be a problem. So just know that if you do happen to throw this in your bag, turn speech off and try to put the buttons facing up. That's what I've had to start doing. The second nitpicky thing I have is that the material that this thing is made of is simultaneously really nice and really annoying. It's Apple's weird rubbery silicone material. They've used it on several other devices, and it feels really nice when you take it out of the box, but it attracts dirt and crumbs and it gets kind of gritty and nasty after a while. You can wipe everything right off of it, but it's still annoying to pick it up and feel that grit on it. It just kind of ruins the Apple feel. But that is really all I have to rant about with the Magic Keyboard and with the iPad. Again, it really is just a matter of whether the pros are worth it for you. I've highlighted a lot of the annoying little things that I've noticed about these products, but I genuinely do love them. I needed something a little more powerful than my iPad, and I upgraded, and I do not regret that decision at all. The iPad works flawlessly, and the keyboard really is magical. It works from setup, it pairs seamlessly. The iPad is so nice. The keys on the keyboard are so nice. I cannot explain in this video how nice that floating display is for your wrist. It is very comfortable. It is very nice. I really do love these products. They were definitely worth the money for me. But you can do almost everything I do with these on the budget iPad. So it really does come down to how much power you need and also how much luxury you want. And that's a decision that you just have to make for yourself. But I really hope you found this video helpful. If you did, please give it a thumbs up so that the YouTube algorithm will continue to know that we exist. If you have any questions or suggestions for future videos, you can let us know in the comments section or via the contact form at challengesolutions.org. The link for that will be in the description. For more content like this, keep an eye on the Challenge Solutions blog, podcast, and YouTube channel, and thank you for watching.